Jeannie's first move was to seal up her ship and kick her engines up to suicidal. She didn't carry passengers, so it was unlikely to squash much. She double-checked that she hadn't got any passengers. No one wanted a repeat of that event. It had taken a week to clean the cabin. She hung her avatar in the closet and hummed her way through her networks. Today she could blow 7 shades of hell out of these scumbags and there would be no complaints. Internally, she felt that the XCC were the wrong sort of bastards, always trying to be nice. She could save Loki and the puppy and everyone would be happy. Oh, and the engineer. Probably most of the others. Whatever. She began to rise from the swirling clouds of gas with a smile. Patricia was currently swearing softy as she came into range of more and more of the Incite pirates. Her shields were solid for now, but she had nothing to shoot back with. Oscar's rocks were keeping them busy, and her flares were throwing their aim, but she needed weapons. Loki was growling at the screens. One of the Incite seemed to be in distress, its shields flickering and its power erratic. One of her flares must have reached the systems. Oscar, can you predict when that bastard is going to lose shields? Her AI ran a quick scan. Every third cycle if it is a standard build. It appears to be repairing, however. Patricia growled. Point whatever we have at that ship and make sure it hits their engines as the shields flicker. Let's see if we can make an impression. The so-called weapons array on the dangerous toys amounted to little more than collision protection. There had been no piracy in human systems for years, and they probably hadn't been upgraded since they were built. She had never even looked at them. She guessed they had never been fired in anger. What happened next was a real surprise when a military-grade plasma beam suddenly cut the enemy engines in half and blew the ship to shrapnel. Out loud, she swore, "What the fuck was that? Oscar, do a scan of our weapons." "That is not on the specs." Suddenly she realized. This was a pirate ship. Of course they had hidden shit like this. "Oscar, do a full scan for other weapon systems on board. Whatever the pirates built, find it and fire it. Full defensive fire until we reach the genie." 3 people were currently sharing her surprise. The Incise AI was trying to calculate if it had been a fluke hit when one of his ships had lost shields. Jeannie was pissed that the little traitor was killing her prey, and Oscar was finding he had lots more guns. They all shared a similar reaction and opened fire. Blinding plasma filled the space between them. Whatever the surprise when the dangerous toys shot one of his ships out of space, it was as nothing when the genie rose from the depths of the gas planet at a speed that left a firestorm behind her. She swamped all the wavelengths she could with a traditional war song, probably to disrupt coordination, but mostly because she liked to rock out. She was no little traitor truck. She was built to fight any war that mankind might face and enjoy it. The Incise fleet now felt the full range of her weapons to the sound of killing in the name. Her speed was such that no immediate firing solution appeared, and for the first and closest 3 frigates that was too late. She grinned with the hat trick. "Dangerous toys, you might want to get behind me. This is going to get messy." Patricia swore as she watched the carnage. 4 of the enemy were now falling in pieces toward the planet. The genie was moving too fast to stay in her cover. Rabbit Bitch was too keen on shooting things. "Oscar, stay as close as you can and pass the weapons to my control. I need you on shields and engines. Take the power from wherever you need it." She called Longnose. "Sir, get the men into the life pods. This might go wrong quickly." Longnose watched as a dark ship erupted from the gas giant. Technically, he knew it was human, but it certainly didn't look like it. It was just a weapon. Patricia had mumbled something about the Human-AI Alliance and left it at that. It was 4 times the size of his ship and built out of pure human tech. It practically stank of sudden-death machine threat. He remembered that humans weren't allowed to work on other people's weapons. He was suddenly glad about that. He turned to the crew. "All right, hit the pods. Our engineer has brought her friends, but I want you ready. I'll launch from here if needed. Go!" He turned to his head of security. "Get our guests into the pods, but keep an eye on them." He picked up Centofappy and handed her to the security chief. "Mind her. Shoot anything that tries to hurt her." The startled chief saluted. "Aye, Captain." The captain leaned in close to the unhappy dog. "Pack leader keeps puppies safeguard love." His puppy whined a bit, but then sniffed. Centofappy brave like, Loki guard bad hunter. The captain smiled. Brave guard well. Patricia began deep breathing, trying to keep track of her enemies. The genie was doing some mad dance through their forces while Oscar desperately tried to keep up. The Incise fleet had stopped shooting at her, preferring to try and kill this mad machine that had appeared from the dark. Patricia decided to teach them to pay attention to her. Fuckers were trying to kill her dog. She picked out one of the genie's victims as it struggled to repair and slammed everything she had into the engines again. It erupted in a satisfying ball of debris. She went looking for the next one. Genie laughed out loud when the little ship swooped in and stole her kill. Good girl. She decided to leave a few more for her to play with. The Wellerman was pushing the ships to their limit when he hit the system. He could smell the plasma burning the moment he tracked into normal space. He could also hear the singing. Out loud, he groaned, "What the fuck is she doing here?" He calmed his 5 ships. "All right, new plan. The Incise fleet, poor bastards, are busy. We are going directly to the dangerous toys and covering her retreat. This engagement is level 8, so I never want to hear a word about it again. I'm sure your bonus will help you remember that. Good luck. Crew to weapons." Jeannie was enjoying herself when the Wellerman pinged into the system. She decided to save time. "Hi, Dad. Nice of you to drop in. I didn't think you ever left your sandbox." Patricia was feeling like perhaps the genie was taking the piss. She wasn't bothering to finish off any of the enemies, leaving injured and broken ships for her to deal with. Fine, except that she didn't have the speed or power to do it. Now that they knew she carried heavy weapons, they were punishing the ship. Her ship was only surviving through Oscar's heroic efforts and her blind faith in picking targets, but they were going to run out of luck or power. She turned Loki suit now. Her dog sniffed and went to pick up his suit. It was currently his favorite blanket. Oscar spoke out. "Engineer, the Wellerman has arrived in the system. We are to await his ships and break for the orbital." He said, and this is a direct quote, "Let Jeannie look after these poor bastards." Query? Patricia smiled briefly. "I guess they have met before. Plot our way to the Wellerman and give me an ETA. We will break for the orbital once they have us covered. In the meantime, we fight on. Eyes front, Oscar." The Incise AI was struggling. The unknown ship was far more lethal than his own ships, and he was unable to mass his fleet against it because the dangerous toys was far more heavily armed and shielded than reported. The pair were splitting his fleet and causing havoc. Just as he geared his ships up to the dual threat, he picked up a new human fleet arriving in the system. He could not face a triple-sided engagement. He decided to fulfill his initial orders. The dangerous toys must perish. Another of his ships fell to the dark ship, lost in some mad dance of plasma that he couldn't calculate. Enough. He turned his ships to the dangerous toys and began firing, picking up as much speed as they could and ignoring the damage from the murderous stranger. He set them all on a suicide run. It only needed one. Dangerous Toys, Part 21. The genie swirled in her perfect world, the beats loudly drumming out the deaths of her enemies. Well, maybe opponents. Targets. That was the word. She cared little for the reason they had dared to cross her swords, despite the XCC giving her a long list of justifications. This was the clear, clean space where the plasma strikes that hit her were her license to dance as only she could. Today would be her masterpiece. She spun herself through a pirouette on her left shield and suddenly had all her weapons bearing on a single ship. A ship that was still fighting the battle of 3 seconds ago, idiots. She was about to turn it into a beautiful spray of alloys when she heard the distress from inside. She listened while some organics did the shouty, praying thing from within. She blew a little bit of their engines and all of their weapons and left it for Loki. For what's your name? Whatever. She turned her weapons on the next target, spinning wildly on her axis to confront the next threat. After a moment of careful listening, she opened up her full range, her complete orchestra of destruction, and watched as fire and death ripped the enemy apart. She sniffed that no one would appreciate the subtlety, but that was the price of being an artist. At least she got to show her dad how good she was. That moment's sanity made her check where Wellerman and Dangerous Toys had got to. Oops! Wellerman was pushing his ships as hard as he could, watching his daughter dance in the only way she knew how. It was hard not to be proud of her work, but damn, she had come so close to the line that he had been ready to end her once. It had been the organics, the ones that she ignored, that had stepped in. They claimed her behavior under supervision was fine. Disliking people wasn't a death sentence, nor was arrogance. They claimed many of them would have to be ended if that was cause enough. Anyway, she liked dogs. Wellerman still didn't understand why that would make a difference, but for the humans it carried a lot of weight. He began picking out the targets between himself and the dangerous toys, sending the scans to Jeannie. She had always done her homework. She would clear a path. The Incise AI was now simply trying to reach the dangerous toys, ignoring data from his failing fleet. He had no optimal response. He pushed his remaining ships onto full power and a ragged evasion pattern, sending them only target data for one ship. His poorly written emotions were elated when he began to strike the enemy again. It seemed the mad ship from the dark had forgotten his prey. He was wrong. Patrika and Oscar had been fighting their own battles, trying to keep a small trading ship alive in the face of a fleet. She had pulled every trick she had ever heard of, but her voice was rising in frustration as she could see that her allies were too far away. There was too much space. There's always too much space. She sent out her last flares, hoping to confuse the fuckers one more time. Oscar wound up his new Level 8 systems, the darkest of human tech, and determined that Patrika and Loki would live on, sort of. He was snapped out of his fear by a call from the genie. "Hello, Oscar. I'm afraid I didn't stay around for introductions, but I left you a present. A sort of thank you. Your avatar is awesome, by the way. Don't worry, I wiped it clean before I left. I think you might want to hit the big red button." She cut off, swirling back into the battle. Even as she spoke, another option appeared on his menu. It was simply a glaringly bright red button. Out of other options, he engaged it. His weapons stopped firing. His engines died. He could hear the shouts from his engineer. All the power suddenly flooded into his shields, and they began to change, weaving something new, pushing far beyond normal limits and turning dark red. They were dead in space, but none of the enemy fire was reaching them. The ship settled into a deathly stillness. Patrika looked at her dead weapons console and called, "Oscar, what the fuck did you just do?" In a small voice, he admitted, "Engineer, I have no idea." Wellerman watched as dangerous toys turned red. He swore softly at the sight. That ship would never fly again. He had a good idea who had left such a design for a baby AI to play with, and no doubt forgetting to mention the side effects. Now this was a rescue. He called the engineer. "Engineer O'Neill, I see the genie has given you some strange choices. As soon as we have reached you, I need you to evacuate the ship. Do not try to engage the engines. Your ship is now a bomb. Do not try and engage the enemy. Gear up and get out on my call. Fair sailing." He began clearing room for the survivors. He hated escort missions. The ship was dying as she watched. Life support, medical, the bridge, all being steadily drained and turning dark. She called the captain. "Sir, time to hit the boats. I'll give you the signal. Permission to leave the ship?" Longnose rose from his seat. From the moment the humans had saved his honor, he had known that this ship was doomed. Even with fleets of allies arriving, he was no optimist to believe that they would land her safely. What Patrika had called a blood price. He hit the comms. "Of course. Permission granted. How much time do we have?" "Sir, until someone tells me what just happened to the ship, I have no idea. Our allies will be here shortly, so grab whatever you can and get ready." She hesitated for a moment and added, "Fair sailing, sir." As she cut the comm, she began pulling her full suit on. Loki waited patiently as she connected it up. "Pack safe, send a fappy Longnose." Patrika knelt down, pack safe, waiting new home sadness. She hadn't meant to add that last part, but the tone was too strong to hide. Jeannie was having the time of her life. Then she saw the flaw in her plan as a couple of ships, little more than drones, got closer to the dangerous toys. She grabbed all her intel and attacked the enemy AI. Her flares were different from anything used by Patrika, aimed at not disrupting the enemy but absorbing it, saturating it with alternative algorithms that would put it into a haze of indecision. She began pumping them out, hammering at the openings left by the enemy's attempt to control the broken remains of its fleet. Patrika looked at her dead consoles, her first post. The taste was bitter, but she wasn't going to save her ship. Better to save her crew. "Oscar, we need to go. Please embody in your avatar and pick up your stuff. Wipe the core when you're ready. Let's move." Oscar felt bereft as he pulled out of his networks. His avatar was surprisingly comfortable. He could feel the tweaks and improvements that Jeannie had left behind. He wasn't sure if he was grateful or not. It was only when he began to move his systems into the avatar that he realized how much bigger he was, far beyond the limits of his first core. He picked up the box anyway. His mothers would want it back. "Engineer, I will trigger the wipe when we are in the pod. Is Loki okay?" Loki sniffed at the avatar. Not genie ship Oscar. Patrika was mildly startled. How could Loki smell the difference in who was inhabiting an avatar? She wondered if the XCC knew about that little quirk. "Oscar, packmate guard." Loki growled his approval and took his station beside the avatar. Patrika listened as the attack on the ship grew stronger, closer. "Time to go." Oscar felt a little silly being guarded by a dog, but if he was honest, it made him feel better. The little crew of the engineering department made their way out, and Patrika sealed the door. The drumming of plasma fire grew louder as they descended to the life pod. She hoped whatever twisted technology the genie had used would keep them safe. She had copied the designs for future study. The genie kept up her dance, wiping ship after ship from her space, leaving only those few that seemed to contain screeching organics within in one piece. The enemy AI was now a failing ghost as her interference beat it down system by system. Every opening was being ruthlessly exploited and giving her elegant opportunities to blow them out of space. She watched as Wellerman got close enough to pick up the dangerous toys people and, with a slight hint of impatience, boosted her drives to intercept the targets he was sending her. Time to end this. Wellerman finally pushed through to his target, spinning his 5 ships in a dance to match his daughter. He watched her clear the route and decided that now was the moment. Engineer O'Neill, time to go. Evacuate your crew and captives. We will be ready. Patricia made the call. Captain, please order the evacuation. I'm leaving now. She punched the button. Oscar silently wiped the core, leaving nothing behind of his time as the dangerous toys. The pod dropped quickly from the ship, beacons lighting up as it fell into clear space. Longnose looked around in sadness loss and hit the command. All crew abandon ship. I repeat, all crew abandon ship. This is not a drill. Dangerous Toys, Part 22. Jeannie spun about again, this time paying closer attention to her mission. The Incise AI was now in a state of madness as she corrupted every function and stole every bandwidth. It was now simply 5 ships hurling towards the dangerous toys, but, as she had learned long ago, never underestimate stupid. The Incise ships continued to fire upon their last target, the dangerous toys resting dead in space. She watched as pods began to drop into the safe hands of the Wellerman. Behind her, the wreckage and life pods of the lucky few began to fall into a new orbit. Wellerman began twisting about to collect the crew of the dangerous toys. He was impressed that she had made it this far and was curious to meet this Longnose and his engineer, and his dog. He began updating his translators to prepare for the event. Patricia left guiding the life pod to Oscar, privately hoping it would keep him busy for a little while. Loki had made himself comfortable, serene, and unworried since he had his pack beside him. New home soon, walkies, treats? Patricia ran her hands under his chin. New home, many walkies and treats, long nose see, enta fappy soon. Loki sniffed his approval and laid his head on her lap and closed his eyes. She closed her own eyes and tried not to recall how badly rescues sometimes went, silently counting the variables and trying not to let the stress of the battle reach too deep. She had lost her ship, and that was enough to think about for the moment. The genie watched as the 5 ships continued to fire, closing the gap while she kept a close eye on her distance. The Incise ships seemed oblivious to her now, so she blew 2 of them apart as they closed on the dangerous toys. She sniffed that it was only 2. She had been hoping to hit the hat trick again. Then she stopped dead in space and watched with interest. She had forgotten to mention all the terms and conditions about her changes to the shields, but fuck it, the ship was empty. 3 ships continued their assault, pushing the shields a darker and darker shade of red. Finally, some threshold was passed. They began to waver and split, pulling back from the incoming fire and leaving the hull almost undefended. The genie called the Wellerman. Hi, Dad, you might want to get the engineer to watch this. Wellerman was already watching and turned to Patricia, recently released from her pod. Oscar and Loki stood together taking in the new ship. Patricia, if you don't mind, please join me in my quarters. She nodded and moved into the tiny cabin that passed for captain's quarters on this skiff. Wellerman closed the door. Sorry, Captain, you need to see this. Out in the dark, she watched her ship under attack, with 3 enemies attacking without response. The genie was dead in space for some reason. Bitch! The strange shields were failing, twisting oddly, and the color began changing, the red turning into a deep purple. Then it happened. Almost too fast for the eye to see as the shields seemed to rear back and her ship exploded. Then the dark red fields reached out and powered the burning debris straight through her attackers' shields and hull, shredding them into broken wreckage. The red faded, leaving only the glare of 3 burning wrecks. The dangerous toys was gone. Wellerman turned away from the screen and took a deep breath. My condolences, Captain O'Neill. I must now report the dangerous toys lost to enemy action, all crew recovered. Do you agree that you have seen and witnessed this? Patricia sounded hollow, her voice far away, but she found the words. Seen and witnessed. My ship is lost and my crew recovered. You may inform the XCC. Wellerman nodded. Seen and witnessed. Please take this. He handed her a whiskey. The room is yours. You can call your crew from here. I'm sure XCC will be calling shortly for details. They always do. He left quietly, pausing only to let in Loki, who was growling at the door. As he walked back to the bridge, the crew were silent, the Victory overtaken by the death of one of their ships. He stood them all down and issued whiskey to be sent to the canteen. Tradition said it should be rum, but he couldn't stand the stuff. It had been a long day, and he could take them all home, drunk or sober. Jeannie was busy scanning all the wreckage and giving herself points for style. Any of the life pods she sent towards the Wellerman, totally disinterested in rescue or wetware. When he complained, she just messaged him, "I'm going back off the grid and I don't carry luggage." When the engineer starts asking questions, remind her that she evacuated a human diplomatic scout, and I am not permitted to leave one of those sitting abandoned in unfriendly space. Then she went back to stripping out the machine intel and ignoring his calls. When she got bored with doing that, she pointed herself back into dark space and left without another word. Wellerman smiled to himself. She was proud of herself and for some strange reason never strayed too far from his orbital. It wasn't just curiosity that had driven her here at top speed and armed to the teeth, prepared to take on the entire universe single-handed. He shook his head. Some people just prefer the dark. She would turn up to talk when all the fuss had died down. Kids. He sent a couple of his ships to pick up the prisoners and turned for home. The first person Patricia called was Longnose. It was his ship that she had lost after all. She swallowed the whiskey and reached for another glass. She didn't know if he drank alcohol, but fuck it. The way she felt right now, she would drink for both of them. She was so far off duty that she might never wear a suit again. Longnose carried Centifappy in his arms. His puppy didn't like all the strange smells. Loki engineer all safe, new home soon treats and walkies. He smiled as that seemed to work. Patricia had assured him that dogs would forgive you anything for those, provided you never broke the promise, and it seemed to work. Centifappy relaxed into his grip. He stepped onto the bridge and took a deep breath, inhaling the unknown. Some of it he recognized, some of it just seemed to make sense in context. Humans sat, war relief, victory, regret, blood PR, ice survival, joy. The ship didn't feel like a proper crew, sense from many, many sources, but they were all humans. This was more humans than he had ever seen in one place, and the scent seemed to be hardwired or something, like it didn't matter that they didn't know each other. Perfect strangers going to war together seemed even stranger than that they went to war at all. He slowly rubbed Centifappy. Humans were truly alien, except one. Centifappy yipped at him, packmatesedness lost alone at his startled owner. Longnose scanned the bridge, cursing his eyesight. He smelled no one that he knew, certainly not crew. He put Centifappy on the floor and watched to see what she would do. He followed as she ran to a small human, a child, and yelped to be picked up. She licked the child's face as he held her as if checking for wounds. Whose child was this? Then it hit him. It was the dangerous toys, not the crew, but the scent of Fengines, the smell of consoles, the air-conditioning old food that burned their way into your nose after a week or two. He stepped forward. "Oscar?" The boy nodded. "Captain, deep regret, ship is lost." Then he broke into human. "I'm sorry, sir, we couldn't save her. There were just too many." Longnose had been a captain for a long time, and he recognized the pain. Sometimes you can ask for too much and forget the cost. Young Oscar had been dragged into a battle and felt he had failed. "Oscar, you and the engineer saved everyone on my ship. You restored my honor and the honor of my ship. You defeated a conspiracy to poison your worlds. She may have been destroyed, but she did not die. You carry her heart." He let his words sink in a little. "And now I must ask you to hang on to Centifappy while I talk to the engineer. I suspect she's feeling the same." His dog yipped in agreement, hearing only the pack leader comfort a packmate. "See if you can take her for a walk somewhere. She disliked the life pod." He smelled the familiar scent of his engines purring. Peculiar but understandable. Outside of the small cabin, he could already scent the unhappiness of his engineer. Well, not his engineer anymore. He opened the door and found her standing and staring at the screen with a glass in her hand. "Patricia?" Patricia stood watching the ships burning in the distance, just embers glowing against the endless night. If the genie had already taken their intel, they would never be recovered, simply left to fall into the local sun or drift forever. Everything that made a ship a living thing had been taken from them, and now they would be left to the cold. Except for her ship, burned in strange fires and revenged. The dangerous toys had died a warrior's death, and only smoke and memories remained. She silently raised a glass to her passing. She heard the door open and turned, not knowing what to say. Loki did, leaping from the floor and reaching up to lick Longnose. She watched as the two of them scuffled and sniffed as they had the first day they had met, assuring each other that they were healthy and happy. Reluctantly, it brought a smile to her face. A meeting that had triggered a treaty and a war. She finished her whiskey and bowed to her captain. "Sir, will you have a drink with me? In honor of the ship's passing?" She played a part in history that we could never have imagined back on the day Whippen ran away from the elevator. That brought a bark of laughter from the captain, and he felt the mood lift. Much later, as Oscar sniffed his glass and the orbital grew close, Longnose sighed, a strange reluctance for this moment to end. "Patricia, where will you go now?" "I will be given a new ship. In fact, I could probably just buy one. I'll always need an engineer." "You could join me." Patricia nodded and poured the last measure out between them. "Captain, my captain. When they made the Dangerous Toys a human diplomat ship and stuck me as captain, I had to sign up again. I'm back in the fleet. I have no idea where I'll be next, but I do know it won't be up to me." They sipped their drinks and watched the future grow larger outside.